Good evening. Welcome to the Peacock Alley, where we're broadcasting live tonight, the Legislature Today show, hosted with myself, Gary Emineth, and Dale Wetzel. Actually, Dale, you're the host. I'm just kind of the board op guy.
You're the better dressed of us, though.
I was dressed better last time.
You have a lovely pink shirt on.
Yeah, real men wear pink, they say.
They do. So. At least it isn't a shirt with no collar like you had on last night.
That was my priestly garment. I should have wore that tonight. You have Mary hour. But anyway, tonight we're broadcasting live from Peacock Alley.
In Bismarck, North
Dakota. That is correct. And it's Wine Down Wednesday, half-price bottles of wine. So all of you out there listening, if you need a little winding down after a busy day at the legislature, come join us down at Peacock Alley.
And Gary Emineth himself has a glass of wine in front of him.
A glass
and
of
it's
Cabernet.
the remnants of the first half-price bottle of wine that he has consumed.
It better not be.
Yes.
I'll be getting a ride home
That's
tonight.
why his speech is slurred.
Hey, I only had one sip. So, Dale, you had a busy day at the legislature today. Why don't you give us a little rundown of what happened today? It's going to be an exciting show tonight, talking about guys that like to hang out at places like this that are frustrated by some of the laws recently passed by you voters out there. No, I'm kidding. But
First of all, I should point out that our three guests this evening are three people who are not out at the National Guard shooting range tonight. And the reason I mention that is because one of the forms of recreation for legislators during this session is on Wednesday nights, if they choose, they can go out to the National Guard Armory rifle range and squeeze off a few rounds. Some folks bring their own guns. I remember former Representative Ole Arsvold had brought his own firearms. And some, if you don't have a gun, the National Guard will lend you one.
Nice.
And you can test your marksmanship. It's interesting how legislators talk about how relaxing that is after a long day of committee hearings. Just go and squeeze off a few rounds. It's like the old. It's kind of a perversion of the old Herman Goering quote. When I hear the word legislature, I reach for my pistol. And
good one, Gail. I like that off the top of your head there. Sure.
Anyway, as far as what went on today, and one of the things that went on today, we're going to be talking about at some length. But one of the big hearings was a $30 million grant fund for the North Dakota University system. What it would do would make available grant money to the 11 colleges in the system. UND and NDSU, the University of North Dakota and North Dakota State University, would be eligible for up to $10 million, and the remaining 9 institutions would be eligible to get $1 million each. And the catch is, if you could call it that, is that they have to raise private money on a 2-to-1 ratio. They have to raise $2 in private funds for every $1 in grant funds. And the objective here is to encourage more private philanthropy, and the foundation executives and university officials who testified today said that state support of some kind is very important when it comes to raising private money. If they're trying to raise money for a particular project, to endow a professorship or do something of that nature, and they're going out to private donors to attempt to finance these things, it helps if they can be told, yes, the state is in on this too. The state is putting its own taxpayers' money into this as well, and that way private donors feel better or are more confident about giving money themselves. And also the president of Valley City State University, Mr. Shirley, Dr. Shirley, I should say, said that it's also a way to get entree into donors that you might not otherwise have, and establish long-term relationships.
Dale, one of the things you think about all the new wealth created in the oil patch, there's stories I've heard of some people that are talking tens of millions of dollars, and there's a trust. Where do you put some of that, right? How much you want to leave for your kids, and so the value of this is a great way to invest in the future of North Dakota students. And even those farmers made a lot of money in the last couple of years, from what I understand. But that the point of it is that's a great opportunity. I think good timing.
It's interesting you mentioned that because the gentlemen, the foundation people, were all asked, how is the fundraising climate out there? And these people are they're like farmers in that they never say, boy, we're doing great, because it's like bad luck. But these people basically said it's okay, which means it's
great.
Going very well. Yes,
if it's okay,
raising money.
Yeah.
It's a good climate to raise money in North Dakota, and I guess that's why this makes this particular proposal important. There's the Senate Finance and Tax Committee is looking at a bill to expand the homestead tax credit, which is a program for that benefits people who are totally disabled and 65 years old or older. Right now, there are income restraints on the program. You can't make more than $26,000. You can't have more than $75,000 worth of assets. And what the proposal is to raise this income ceiling to $50,000 and also to get rid of the asset test. There's frankly, some disquiet amongst the committee members, the Senate Finance and Taxation Committee members, about some of the financials of the bill. Is $50,000 too much? Is unlimited assets something that they want to get into? Should there be a cap, even if it's frankly a lot higher than it is now? I think that's what they're going to be talking about when they work on the bill. And the third thing, one of them, is what we're going to be speaking about with our guests, and it is a bill that would require compensation for businesses that are having to spend money in order to obey the new initiated measure no smoking law. And the reason for this is that businesses, I think it's fair to say, they've felt a bit whipsawed by smoking policy. The legislature greatly limited indoor smoking at workplaces in 2005. Then there have been subsequent attempts to extend that to bars and all indoor workplaces. The legislature never did accept that. Then came an initiated measure last year which says no indoor smoking in indoor workplaces, no smoking motel rooms, no smoking in bars, no smoking in truck stops. That's it. And the voters overwhelmingly approved this. I mean, it was, I think, a 2/3 majority. It was not close. And the folks that are having to deal with this feel aggrieved because they've had to spend money on one set of regulations, then another, and then another. And some of this is brought about by local ordinances rather than the legislature. But they just feel aggrieved by this. And this brought about a bill which was introduced by one of our guests, Mr. Blair Thoreson, a representative from Fargo, a Republican. He said basically that the bill says that these businesses should be reimbursed for their expenses in complying with this law. That's basically it. Could you elaborate a bit, Mr. Thoreson?
Right, Dale. Well, as you said, over the last several years we've seen a lot of different levels of regulation amongst different cities in the state, different municipalities. And I was contacted by several business owners saying, now that we have this new policy in place that the voters put in, and we respect what they did, obviously, whether you agreed or not what happened, it's now the law of the state of North Dakota, and we'll go forward in enacting what they've done. There were still a lot of costs incurred up to this point because we weren't certain. We were following what we were told to do to that point, and now there is a whole new structure, and so we have a lot of costs. It's been a little bit onerous on us. Would you look at putting in a bill? I had a bit of experience with my own business in this, not as much as others probably, so it's not really about that, but it's about just the fact that we do have a lot of different costs out there, and it's maybe a way to recoup that. The tobacco funds do have a significant amount of money that they're holding on at this time. I understand they still have uses for them, but I think this may be one way that now that we've set this new regulatory climate, we can take care of those people that are affected by it and then move forward.
What we're going to be talking about, and this sounds very arcane, but you'll realize the importance of it in a moment, is what is an entrance and what is a sticker? Because the law that we're going to be talking about, and first of all, let's introduce our guests. We have Representative Robin Weisz. He's a Republican from Hertzfield. He represents an extremely large district in central North Dakota, which was recently drawn only last year by the legislature. And he is the chairman of the House Human Services Committee, which has jurisdiction over the bill that we're going to be talking about this evening. We have Naomi Muscha. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
Thank you. She is a Democrat from Enderlin. She is a new member of the legislature, one of the group of new Democratic legislators in the legislature this year. And we have Representative Dick Anderson of Willow City.
That's correct.
He is a Republican, and Representative Muscha and Representative Anderson are both members of the Human Services Committee, and they are familiar with this bill that we're going to be discussing because they had a hearing on it today. And what the bill does, there's two elements to it. One of them, it changes the definition, or it inserts a definition of entrance into the law that North Dakota voters approved last November to ban smoking in indoor workplaces. And the reason that the question of what is an entrance is important is because the law is being interpreted by some folks who are trying to figure out how to comply with it as applying to things like garage doors and I guess I'd call them loading dock bay doors, places where people can use to get in and out of a building, but you wouldn't normally think of a garage door, for example, as a way to, the best way or even the primary way to get into a business. You think of a door that pulls out or that opens inward, and the definition that's part of this bill that is being proposed essentially says if the door opens from the right or the left and it's a way into the building, it's an entrance. And this is meant to get rid of the idea that a garage door is an entrance and therefore needs to have a posted warning saying no smoking in this building and you can't smoke 20 feet from this entrance, which is part of what the initiated measure says. The other element of the bill is the labeling of vehicles that can be considered places of employment. Now, that sounds a bit bureaucratic, and frankly, I didn't put it very well. But we're talking about things like a plumber's truck or the truck of a business or a state fleet vehicle that state employees use to drive around. These are all considered extensions of the workplace. And as a result, you cannot smoke in your workplace because of the law. And so there needs to be, according to the law itself, some sort of indication that you can't smoke there. And so how do you satisfy that requirement? Well, the law says that you have to have some kind of notice that you can't smoke in this vehicle. And the law that the proposal or the bill that is before Representative Weisz's committee would get rid of that requirement because it's regarded by some as being a bit too cumbersome. For example, every state fleet vehicle has to have a sticker now that says you can't smoke in this vehicle, even though there has not been smoking allowed in state-owned vehicles for a number of years. You have to have a sticker in an ambulance, and who sees anyone smoking in an ambulance unless you've got a really serious addiction problem. And the representative of the Fuel Dealers Association said, why would we put up no smoking on our places of business because we got all this gasoline and flammable stuff around. I mean, we already have placards everywhere that say no smoking. We don't need another one. Representative Weisz, when you saw this bill, what was your impression of it?
Well, Dale, I think the reason for the bill is exactly how you spelled it out, and I think it was an attempt to try to put some reason into some of the legislation because, frankly, it goes even beyond just the normal thinking of a state fleet vehicle or that plumber's truck, as you pointed out, because based on the language in what was passed in Measure 4, Amtrak is going to need to placard their vehicles if they run through the state of North Dakota. Delta Airlines will be forced to placard every airplane. Even though there's no smoking inside, the law clearly says it has to be clearly visible from the exterior of the vehicle.
And the gentleman's name is Mr. Karel Sovak. He's an assistant professor at the Gary Tharaldson School of Business at the University of Mary. Welcome, Professor.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And I love the format. I said when I got here, this is really a cool concept. And And I congratulate you on your new
Thank you.
endeavors, and I think it's a great way to get the news out.
We think it's a cool concept, too. The question becomes, is it going to be a profitable concept?
But that's always the challenge with any new startup. But you know what? We got great talent, Karel. So having Dale heading up this whole news service and the newspaper stuff that he's doing as managing editor, as you know, in anything in the school business, when it comes down to it, if you got the right talent, you got to put the right business plan in place, then you got to execute. So the execute is the challenge yet, though, but we got the right team in place, at least with Dale heading it, so we're excited about that.
That's half the battle.
So, Professor Sovak, first of all, who is Gary Thoreson? Who is the school named for?
You know, Gary Thoreson started out as a single hotel proprietor and grew that into a multi-million-dollar empire. He's currently out in Las Vegas developing new properties, and he was one of our major benefactors and ended up getting our school named after him. And Gary has been out to the school a number of times, always wanting to engage with the students. And we got a hold of him when we started the Idea Center, and Gary was very instrumental in helping us with the understanding startup businesses and things like that. So he's just a very good role model for our students to follow.
How did you come to approach him? I mean, is he an alumnus or what?
You know, I don't really know. I'm not on that side of things. When the school was built, it was I know that they've been out looking for a number of donors, and Gary rose to the top. And my understanding was they played softball with one of the fundraisers. So it was just a natural discussion that there's some naming rights to the School of Business, and we think you'd be a good fit for it.
So he's in the hotel business. What hotels does he own?
Oh, a number of hotels. The newest one that went up by the Home Depot building, the old Home Depot building up there. He has a number of interests in the Fargo area as well.
I understand that you spent the last several months teaching in Rome.
Amazing experience.
And what were you teaching in Rome, and how were you able to make the students pay attention to you when they're in Rome?
Well, I taught a global leadership class, responsive leadership on a global basis. And so we have 19 students that went with us over there. And it's a fantastic campus atmosphere. It's about a 30-minute bus ride, public transportation, into the center city of Rome. And so we're quite a ways away from all the hustle and bustle, which makes it conducive for us being able to be in a classroom situation, but also conducive for us to take and do some ventures, daily ventures out into the city. And so it was easy for us to encourage our students to get up in the morning and be able to take a little bit of intellectual walk, and then go into the city and take a historical walk through a magnificent city in Rome.
Well, did they ever take like a pub walk or a restaurant walk? Or
there were many walks that took us outside of things, and in fact there were some that went up to Ireland, and
Okay.
I know that they're known for their pub walks.
That's a pretty stiff walk up there. How does one teach global leadership? What are the elements of global leadership?
Well, you know, we parsed the word in its beginning right there. We wanted to talk about who was a global leader. And so we talk about what makes a global leader. And it really has to be somebody who was influential and impacted the world. And so that was one of the criteria. Responsive, they had to be responsive to the needs of not only their own community, but the world at large. And then leadership, the characteristics of leadership. And we talked about transformational leaders and just transactional leaders, but then also servant leaders. And that's one of our founding philosophies at the University of Mary. And so a number of the students chose individuals who were truly servant leaders, John Paul II, Mother Teresa. Those were the ones that rose to the top and were quickly snapped up.
Representative Dosch, do you think that just to get on a bit of a different track, do you think that the legislature, the North Dakota legislature, takes into account private schools, private colleges as much as it should in making higher education policy?
Well, you know, Dale, I don't think they do, quite honestly. In fact, I've sponsored a few different pieces of legislation over the years. I have another one in the hopper now that's going to probably be coming up in the next week or two. It primarily deals with K through 12 education, but allows
the private schools to, in essence, contract with the DPI to provide educational services. So a school like, for instance, Shiloh or St. Mary's could contract with the DPI to educate the kids, and all they have to do is pay them 25% of the cost of what it cost if this child would be in the public sector. So it's a tremendous cost savings to the state, and I think a lot of people overlook that when they talk about private education, and competition is always good out there. The private schools have kind of proven that they can do a lot more with a lot less, and you look at the funding that we provided, K through 12 and higher ed. Their budgets have doubled over the last 10 years that I've been in there, and you kind of have to scratch your head a little bit and say, are the citizens really, getting the best bang for their buck?
Professor Sovak, first of all, we're talking this evening to Professor Karel Sovak. He's an assistant professor at the University of Mary in the Gary Thoreson School of Business, and the voice you just heard a moment ago was Representative Mark Dosch. He's a Republican from Bismarck, and we're both here at speaking on the Legislature Today radio show on a segment sponsored by the University of Mary. Professor Sovak, something that Representative Dosch just mentioned made me think of this question. Do you see the public college sector in North Dakota do you see it as competition? Do you see it as a partner? Do you even think of it that much?
I would assume that there would be the four-year colleges, state colleges, would be competition. But as Mark says, you really put out a quality product. You really don't worry about that. And I think that you've started to see a little bit of that more blurring. Our partnerships with Arizona State, for example, our partnerships with BSC, the 2-year, what we see as those a 2+2 programs, where those students go through, get a quality education at the community college level or junior college level, and then move on to a higher education. We're in partnership now with Dickinson State. So I think you're starting to see a number of different elements that come through, where they are seeing the benefits of having a private education that goes with that, the holistic side of it, the Benedictine values, and finding that you can really nurture the whole person.
What do you gentlemen both see as the challenges to higher education in the future, and how do we address them?
Well, first of all, the declining population, the number of students, we're starting to see that a little bit now at the elementary level where it's starting to increase, but the pool of which you can grab students is getting smaller and smaller. Again, that should pick up again, but you're talking maybe K through 4, where you won't see that now for probably another 8 years. So that declining population, the pool that you have to draw from, majority of those students do choose state schools. Private education is starting to do a better job of getting out there and marketing, again, the quality of the education that they'll get, the personal relationships that they'll get with people. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge over the next 8 to 10 years, is to weather that little lull in the population pool. And if you can get through that, then it's just finding that right delivery system that's best for the changing demographics of students.
Well, Dale, I agree on that. One of, I think, the biggest challenges in higher ed, and this is speaking now from the public standpoint that we've been dealing with. For years we were dealing with declining enrollment, and all the issues that come with that, and now we are starting to see an uptick, at least in North Dakota here. But the difference and things that are coming is the online services, and so we, as a legislator and looking at funding for higher ed, we want to be very careful what we do as far as expansion of the brick and mortar type of things, because I think we are going to see this change, and the collaboration between colleges and universities, such as what University of Mary's done, has been great, and I think maybe that's where we have to start focusing a little bit more of our effort.
One of the things that was interesting to me about the governor's budget proposal was the amount of construction there was in there for higher education. And I wondered if that was congruent with any kind of trend toward more online delivery and methods of offering higher education that don't need expensive building.
Well, and that's exactly right, Dale. One of the things, or a good portion of those funds, $68 million of that is looking at for a new med school. And, given our aging population and that sort of thing, our shortage of doctors, that may not be too bad of an investment, a long-term investment for the state. But some of the other things in there, I think we really do have to question and be careful what we're doing.
Professor Sovak, one of the we were talking earlier about servant leadership, and one of the things that I was looking at in terms of fulfilling that mission was what the business students do to help low-income people prepare their taxes. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Our accounting instructors have always been instrumental in making sure that the students get a practical experience, and tax time is the best time to take a look at crunching numbers, if you will. The Volunteers and Tax Assistance, which is the VITA program, has been around for a number of years, and starting, I believe it is Saturday, they'll already get going. I think it's the first Saturday in February, 9 to 11:30 at the Butler Center. They make themselves available, no appointment necessary. It's all free. Go in there, and you have the students help prepare your taxes, and it's a great way for our students to involve themselves in that, and it's a great way for people to at least double-check their work, if nothing else.
Can you tell me who avails themselves of that service?
Dr. Rhoda Sotner is the head of that program. She has been doing that now. I believe this is her 4th or 5th year doing that. And you have an instructor there to oversee all of that, and then the accounting students that take part in that, and it's on a voluntary basis from them as well.
Who are their clients? Who comes in for help?
Generally, it is the lower income individuals and families. That would be, and I don't have the dollar amount off the top of my head of what that lower income would be.
Do they have are their returns tough to do, or is it pretty much, here's your W-2 form and subtract everything and, and send in the check?
It's more or less the easier forms to fill out. You basically have your W-2s, and you don't have a lot of deductions. You don't have a lot of expenses.
And how do the students benefit from this, do you think?
Number one, they're showcasing their talents to the people in the public. They're showing, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we're learning, and we're able to assist you in that. But I think the most valuable thing is again, giving back. It's service to the community, and it's just another way of showing the Benedictine values to the community.
I want to return to where we started from. You've spent several months in Rome teaching global leadership. What was about Rome that impressed you? Talk about being in Rome, living in Rome, outside of Rome, being able to go into Rome. What do you think?
Rome is a wonderful touristy city, and I've always said Rome was good, Europe was fantastic, and so Rome is one of those cities that you just stand in awe. You really do. You go to the Overlook and you see the magnificent city, but they have some wonderful people. A variety of churches that we went to. We went to almost every church that there was, and so there's wonderful people in Italy, wonderful people in Europe, and it's just a fantastic experience.
We've been speaking to Professor Karel Sovak, an assistant professor at the Gary Thoreson School of Business at the University of Mary, and Representative Mark Dosch, a Republican from Bismarck, who has been interested in higher education since he came into the legislature and has offered a number of bills on that subject. Thank you both, gentlemen, for coming to talk to us.
Thanks for joining us tonight at Peacock Alley, and thank you for the sponsorship, U of Mary.